Hello, I'm Alex Mansfield, the host of Manny Talks Shooting, and welcome to another episode. This is the shooting podcast where I talk to individuals all across the shooting industry. We'll talk competition, self-defense, concealed carry. If you like this content, check out our YouTube channel, Manny Talks Shooting. And without further ado, let's get to this episode. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back for an episode of Manny Talks Shooting, the shooting podcast on the internet, because that's where I live and enjoy my time, I guess. At least ask my wife, because I'm never around, I guess. But anyway, let's talk about the title sponsor of the podcast, Go Fast, Don't Suck. Bill supports a lot of major matches throughout the year and makes fun of you on the internet because it's kind of true in his memes, so get over it. But GoFastDon'tSuck.net. Get your match jerseys, get your match banners, dry fire targets, your hats that cover up receding hairlines like myself. So go check out GoFastDon'tSuck.net. Tell them Manny sent you. Move on with your day. Without further ado, let's talk to one of my favorite ex-podcast hosts, Mr. Kenny Platt.
Hey, what's up?
It's going pretty good, Kenny. If people lived on a rock like 2 years ago and before, there was this great podcast called The Perfect Double / Make Ready Podcast. That's no longer a thing. Kenny was a host. So
yeah, it was a fun one.
It was a fun one. I like to bother Steiner all the time about it, but it gets me nowhere.
He's got too much other. He's too busy printing off and lasering doodads. Tim and I have talked about maybe resurrecting it even for just every once in a while, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. It's kind of sad. I was clicking on my feeds. I'm like, oh, look, it still kind of shows up in my Apple iTunes thing. Nope, nothing works. It makes me sad.
Yeah, I know,
but it's okay. But anyway, guys, we're gonna learn a little bit about Kenny, and we're gonna have a fun conversation. But Kenny, so who are you, and how'd you get into shooting?
Yeah, I'm Kenny, and I got into shooting.
You killed Kenny.
Yeah. It's great to be of my age, like right when that came out, when South Park came out. I'm pretty sure it was in like late middle school or in junior high. So it's just like the worst time to be named Kenny.
Right.
I got it all the time. I started shooting. I basically started shooting 3 times, and the third time like stuck as far as competitive shooting. I grew up in a house, with guns. My dad hunted a little bit, but that never really affected me. He shot USPSA. It may have just been IPSC at that time. I don't know. I'm 36, so it may have just been IPSC at that time, may have been USPSA. I'm not sure. But either way, he shot that quite a bit when I was growing up. And the first time I got into it, I was maybe 12, 13, 14. I shot a handful of matches with him. Like 2, 3, 4 at the most. I don't know. But I shot a few matches with him. We'd go out and shoot and practice and I thought it was cool, so I'd shoot a couple of matches, and then other stuff got in the way. I also play golf and play guitar, and other things just took precedence over shooting. The second time I got into it was when I moved from California, where I was born, to Idaho, and that was when I was 21 in 2007. And when I moved out, I'm like, well, I gotta buy a gun. Like, I'm moved out. I'm on my own now. Like, I'm just moved to Idaho. It's so much. There's no mag capacity limits. There's no waiting period. It's time to buy a gun. So I went to a local indoor range / gun shop and bought a Glock 34. And they said, hey, we do indoor, IDPA matches every whatever it was, every third Wednesday, or I don't know when it was. You should come and do it if you've never done it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I shot USPSA with my dad when I was a kid. Maybe I'll come do it. So I did, again, a handful of those matches, 2, 3, 4 of them. I think I got second or third at like my first match. I'm pretty sure I got second at my first match. And it was just like, well, it's IDPA. And I kind of knew well enough to know, like, hey, just shoot zeros. Like, just kind of trot over here and stand on the line and shoot, or there wasn't a line. Slice the pie, right? Or whatever it was, and right. Shoot zeros, and then trot over there and shoot zeros. And it was good enough to get second or third, or whatever it was. So that was like the second time I got into competitive shooting, and it died off again. I did it 2, 3, maybe 4 times, died off. The third time I got into competitive shooting was about 10 years ago. And I had a buddy that I met at work, but I didn't work with. I worked with a bunch of his friends, just like a mutual acquaintance kind of guy that I ended up becoming pretty close friends with, that talked, just in getting to know each other or whatever and hanging out. He had grown up in a family that shot rifles and shotguns and never really shot handguns. And I was the opposite of that, where handguns were like what I always liked to shoot. And he said, could you teach me how to shoot a handgun? Like, are you any good? I'm like, well, I'm not like good, but I can shoot, and I can shoot well enough. And I've competed a little bit. And that was like, well, what do you mean you've competed? So we go down the YouTube rabbit hole of showing him, whoever it was at the time, 10 years ago, Rob Latham videos and whatever,
Right.
showing him people shooting USPSA. And he's like, do they do this around here? And I'm like, yeah, they do actually. It's like, that's amazing. I need to do it. And I'm like, let's do it. So I already had some stuff. I had a Glock at the time and like Uncle Mike's Kydex holster and whatever. So I cobbled together some gear, and he ended up buying whatever he bought, and he shot 1 or 2 matches, and I kept going. I just kept going and going and going. And this time, like, I had just barely enough disposable time and disposable income for it to kind of keep going. And then I didn't stop. So I started out. I say that would be like, for me, that's started out, like the third time. I started out with a Glock 17 shooting production that lasted for, I don't know, 6 or 8 months, maybe close to a year, something like that. Initially got classified as B class, and I thought I was gonna have an initial of like master. I was sure, like, I got second place at an IDPA match, and I did this when I was a kid. I bet I'll come out and shoot the classifier match, and I'll at least make A, and I'll probably make master. And I barely made B. And I'm like, oh shit, USPSA is hard,
Right.
Which is, it's not bad. And there's a lot of people that, and no offense to those people that get their initial classification as D or C, that's fine. I had a leg up. Like, my initial classification was like my 8th match. You know what I mean? It wasn't my first match by a long shot. So, and I grew up with a dad that shot USPSA, and he also went, hot and cold on it. Sometimes he'd do it, and sometimes he'd quit for a handful of years and then get roped back in, with his buddies to do it or whatever. So yeah, and then switched to limited, made master, a year or so later, made grandmaster, year and a half or so, I think, after that. It took like 2.5 years, I think, in total, maybe 3, something like that, to make GM. I don't remember. And then played around in single stack, back to limited, back to production. Now I'm shooting CO. That's kind of my USPSA history. Got on some podcasts from squadding with the Paracast dudes. Is essentially what happened. I went down to shoot Barry's Steel Open, the first time I ever shot it. And I was just a listener, and I looked, and it was like time to squad. And I'm like, oh, all the Paracast guys are on this squad. I'm like, Dad, do you want to squad with them? That'd be cool. He's like, yeah, sure. So we squatted with them and just got along really well and kind of BS the whole time. And they're like, do you want to come on the podcast and talk about Barry's Steel Open? And I'm like, yeah, it was really fun. That'd be cool. And then I ended up being on that show for, I don't know how long, 3 years, maybe. But it was a long time, at least 2 or 3 years before we kind of ended up doing our own show later.
Yeah. And then you did the Make Ready podcast.
Ready podcast, yep, with Tim and Eric. That was never regular. It was always fun.
Yeah. You guys were decently regular for a while. Well, it seemed like once a week, maybe?
Oh, never. We were never that regular. We tried to be like once every other week.
Yeah.
And it ended up being like once a month, once every 6 weeks for a while. Maybe, I'm sure there was a stretch where we actually hit once every other week for like 6 weeks, maybe. It was never very regular. It was right at the time that Tim started to, really actually teach professionally and go full time with it. And that took, a lot of time and effort for him. And Eric was really starting to get Range Panda stuff going, which took a lot of his spare time. And I was the one that always had the time, because I, at that time, traveled a lot for work. So I'm like, dude, if we record on, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday night, I'm sitting in a hotel room with nothing to do. Let's go. Like, this is just killing a couple of hours for me that I would be, scrolling on Instagram or whatever the fuck. So
right.
I had the time, and those guys were busy little beavers.
But the best part was, even during that, was when you had your house built and Tim was trying to build his house. Yeah. Kenny's like, you're like, I'll send you people. Just let me know.
Yep. But I got a whole lot full of Mexicans just working away every time I show up. There's 12 of them. Building a house, man.
Wait, they all were working at the same time, or was one of them working and the rest were standing around?
No, they're all working at the same time.
Wow, that's better than most construction companies then. Oh, that's too funny. But yeah, so you've been around the block for a while. Yeah, so you've been dabbling. I don't think, you said this? You're a grandmaster in limited single stack in production.
Correct.
Yeah,
which was working on CO.
Which one was the most rewarding to become a GM in?
Oh, the first one. Well, actually, I don't know about that. Maybe the second one. Maybe single stack. I don't know. It's tough. They all were different. The first one, I was not sure if I was capable. I thought that GMs were from outer space. I was not sure if I was capable of becoming a grandmaster. And then there was a local guy that did it first. And I'm like, well, I shoot with that guy and we go back and forth all the time. So like if he can do it, I can probably do it. So I started hitting dry fire really hard, draws and reloads. That stuff, gun handling matters a ton in the classification system. And the mindset, sorry for the people that don't like this, the mindset of hero or zero, at least to a certain point, not to the point where it's unsafe or that your zeros are like actually zeros, but I'm going to shoot this no shoot target as if it's not a no shoot target. I'm going to, put the gun over there and be 85% sure that I'm going to have 2 acceptable shots. And if I don't, not going to kill my match, not going to hurt my feelings. It's not going to count anyway. Right. I don't like that. I think the classification system should work very differently than it does personally, but that is the way that it works. So yeah, the first time I made it, it was a huge, like, I can't believe I did that. I wasn't sure if I could do it. The second time I made it in single stack, or the first time was in limited. Second time I made it in single stack was validation of like, hey, it wasn't a fluke. I'm actually a pretty good shooter. Like if I buckle down and make sure that I'm, at the top of my game, the top of my game is good enough to make GM. And the third time was in production. Honestly, I knew that I would do it. At that point, I'm like, okay, well, I've already made it twice. Switching over to this gun wasn't that big of a deal. I switched from a 2011 over to the P320. And I'm like, I've gotten used to the trigger. It loads fine. It points good. Like I'm shooting this gun just as well as I'm shooting my other guns. No reason I couldn't do it. I thought it would take a little longer than it did. And I actually got it done like fairly quickly. I ended up, I think I made GM with that gun within 4 months of buying it, like of switching to the division. I thought it would take longer than that. Now switching to a dot, which I've just recently done. And part of it is the current state of where the classification system is and how aggressive it is right now. I mean, sometimes it's just laughable. There are some times where I'll shoot a run, and I don't want to say like it's like, oh my God, amazing, but like it's good. Like I'll look, there's a 50-person match. I won the overall, like all the open guys, all the PCC guys, I won the overall, and it's like a 88%. And you're like, okay, that's what it is. Like that's where the 100 is right now. The 100's that hard. And you can take it personally, like, oh man, I'm not good enough. You're like, well, that means nobody else shot their classification either. Like if I shot an 88 on it and I won the overall on this particular classifier, that means literally nobody down the line shot their classification on this one either. It's like, maybe it's not me. Maybe the system is a little bit jacked up, but
yeah,
GM with a dot will come sooner or later, but it'll take a little bit longer because of the current state of the classification system.
Right. Well, I even remember back when you guys were doing the podcast, you were talking about like, I don't know about this dot thing. I don't know. I like iron sights.
I was a hater, dude.
You finally drank the Kool-Aid though now, didn't you?
Well, it was out of necessity. I mean, yeah, it was out of necessity, man. I mean, I switched. I never really switched between limited and single stack. Like I shot limited and single stack at the same time. Like my first 1911 that I bought, well, it wasn't my first nice one that I bought like for competition was a 40. And I bought it as a Trojan 40. And I bought it so that I could just load the same ammo and choose like, do I want to shoot limited or do I want to shoot single stack? Like there was no, I'm quitting one and moving exclusively to the other for X amount of time. The guns are so similar that it's like, do you reload more or reload less? Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to remember where I was going with that. Oh yeah, switching to a duck. So switching from 1911s and 2011s to the Legion to the P320, I thought was going to be a harder switch than it was. Honestly, it wasn't a very hard switch. It took 2 or 3 weeks to get used to the trigger because the trigger is longer. There's more take up. There's more movement in the actual break of the trigger. The reset's longer. Everything about it's longer. Mm-hmm. And everything else about it was just as good. This is just my experience with the gun. It recoiled about the same. It reloaded about the same as a 1911 with a magwell. It's a big opening at the bottom of the magwell on a Legion, especially if you take a little emery board to it, sandpaper it out a little bit. So switching over to that gun, I thought was going to be harder than it was. And it wasn't. So then after having a good couple of years of experience shooting basically just that gun, just putting a dot on top of it was the hardest switch I've ever made. Like harder than switching platforms, harder than switching between major minor scoring, between high cap, low cap, between striker fire and hammer fired guns. Switching from irons to dot was a bigger switch than any of those switches. And what I found was that it's like, okay, the up close stuff, like really close, 3-4 yards, it doesn't matter because you don't really see barely anything anyway. It's like, are my hands in front of my face? Good. It's time to pull the trigger. Like that's good enough. Like whole body index stuff, right? That doesn't matter if you got a dot or iron sights. And long distance, which we don't shoot that often, but like, let's say steel or partials at 15 or beyond, and open paper at 25 and beyond, which we don't shoot a ton of, but that stuff is instantly, even for somebody that's brand new to a dot, it's instantly easier with a dot. Just is. Got both eyes open. The dot takes up less room on the piece of steel, and you don't have to do any, extraneous lining up of the sights because it's just a floating dot on there. But it's all the in-between stuff. It's most targets in between 5 and 15 yards that I found more intuitive because I had been doing it for 8-9 years with iron sights, and faster for me to shoot with iron sights than with a dot. But that's most of the targets you shoot, right? So it's like this is 90% of the targets that you're presented with at a match. I found easier with iron sights because the dot is giving me information that I don't want. It's showing me that I can't hold the gun still. It's showing me that when I feel like I'm ready to pull the trigger for a second time, that the gun didn't return exactly to where it was. Now, that doesn't mean that it didn't return to a spot that's not good enough. Like it probably did. If your grip is good enough on the gun, it probably did return to a spot that is good enough. But iron sights will lie to you and tell you that it's like, oh, it's rock solid. Like when I grip the gun, it doesn't move at all. And when I shoot a pair of doubles, they're right next to each other. It's like, no, they're not. Go look at the target. It's like you see a first sight picture that is crude and looks good enough. And then you shoot again when that same crude, good enough looking sight picture returns. The dot shows you that it's only okay. And it took me a while to accept that it was giving me information that I needed to ignore. And that took like 3 or 4 months of dedicated, like, I'm going to shoot a dot. And I'm not going to lie to you. Like I got frustrated in practice 2 or 3 times and took my dot off my gun because I was pissed off. I was just like, screw this. I can't do it. I'd take the dot off the gun, put the rear sight back on the gun, shoot the end of practice with irons and say, that's it. Dots are dumb. I'm going back to irons. And then the next day I'd be like, no, you need to make this switch. Irons are dead, which I hate is true, but like it's true. Irons are dead, at least in USPSA. If you want to have people to shoot against, you have to shoot CO or open. And I don't want to shoot open. So it's like, you have to shoot CO. If you want to have people to shoot against, you have to learn how to do this. If other people have done it, you can do it too. So it took much frustration and many thousands of rounds and 3 or 4 months. And then the aha moment was like, I don't have to pay attention. I can just not use all of the information that it gives me. I can just say that, this streak is good enough. And when it returns to somewhere that looks good enough, that's roughly in the middle of the target, you're good to send another one. And then you can learn to trust that and do it intuitively and quickly, just like shooting over the top of the slide on an iron sights gun at, 7 to 10 or 12 yards. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, so now there's no disadvantage. Like you gain all the advantage on the hard shots that you ever did when you first picked up a gun with a dot. And you don't have the disadvantage of when you first pick up a dot and it's giving you information that you're not used to processing. Now it's just, yeah, I want a dot on all my guns. But it took me a long time to get to that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it took you a while, but I think you finally come around to it. It's like dots are your friend. I'm assuming
can be. How many times do you see a new shooter run up to a target though, like a 4-yard target, and present it and go,
wait,
wait, and then they see their dot like legitimately 2 or 3 seconds later, and then shoot. And it's like, dude, if you didn't have that dot on there, you would have shot 5 times and left by now. Like you're So yeah, dots are all good once your index is good and once you learn to not use them for information that you don't need. But they're not just unilaterally like, if you're brand new to shooting guns and you want to shoot well, just put a dot on there. It's like, you could still shoot terrible.
Yeah, you still
put
should shoot terrible.
you could shoot terrible with a dot on the gun. And if nobody ever explains anything to you, you can be slow too.
Right. Well, I mean, I know locally here, it's like we don't get anyone who comes into production or anymore. Like, sure, they'll come into limited shooting minor, or they're all coming in with like raced out carry optics guns. I'm like, where the hell are you been? Like, and they've got full rigs. It's not even like they've got the shitty holster anymore. It's like they got this whiz bang holster with a bunch of mag pouches, and it's like, where the hell did you come from?
Yeah, I was just actually talking to my son. He's 9 and he's just starting to think that guns are really cool. So I built him a little 1022 and we're going to try and see if he wants to get into Shoot and Steel Challenge this summer and start him out there. But he was asking about like, what about iron sights? Iron sights versus a dot. And I'm like, hey, they're both cool. I'm like, if you want to shoot iron sights, that's great. Dad did it for a long time. He's like, does anybody still, is it popular? Is it kind of like half and half? And I'm like, no, not at all. So like I looked at like even just our little local match. I don't remember the exact number, but we had like 45, 48, like high 40s amount of shooters. And I want to say there were maybe 8 or 9 iron sight shooters total. So it's like 40 to 7 or 8 dots to irons. It's just, as far as USPSA is concerned, and I don't think that's unique to my situation. I think that's pretty much everywhere. It's like, it's at least 2/3, if not 3/4, or sometimes more than 3/4. But like it's in that 2/3 to 3/4 range dots, and then the rest irons, and the numbers, and it keeps going down every year. So that was like, the impetus for me to want to switch over to a dot is to have people to shoot against, because I've done the iron sight stuff to varying degrees of success, but won a handful of state and area matches with single stack and prod, and a little bit with limited, and it was just like, I like shooting this gun, I like shooting minor, I guess I got to learn how to shoot a dot. So I just decided to finally do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you went down the whole rabbit hole of how heavy can I make this son of a bitch weigh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, weight is an interesting thing on a handgun, man, and I have a lot of opinions on it because I've played around with it a lot, and not just on this one gun, but I've played around with weight a lot. Yeah, it matters. There's way more to be said than just my gun weighs X amount of ounces. It's like, okay, how and where? And what about other stuff? How much does your slide weigh? What kind of recoil spring are you running? Do you specifically have muzzle weight added, or did you just slap brass grips on your gun and say, my gun weighs 50 ounces? It's like, might shoot awesome, might shoot like shit. I don't know. Like where you put the weight, at least for me, makes a big difference. Like, for example, I sheepishly run a flashlight on my gun. And I've gone back and forth between running a flashlight on my gun because there's a huge part of me that says like, dude, come on, like you're a good shooter. You don't have to do this. Like you could go out and be respectable and have a normal, nice looking gun and still do well and still beat some people and not hang this stupid flashlight on your gun. But I have done enough testing for myself to be convinced that I shoot a gun better with a flashlight on it. And it's not really so much because it recoils less, although it does recoil a little bit less. That's not really the gain. The gain that you get, at least for me, is that when you have a heavier muzzle of any gun, that muzzle tends to not want to move when you pull the trigger. So that's what I mean about like total weight of a gun. So you could have a total weight gun that's very heavy. Say you've got like a 1911, like a normal 1911 short rail bushing barrel, like not a heavy barreled gun, heavy front end of that gun. And you slap brass grips and a brass magwell and tungsten, anything you could possibly imagine, you could get an overall heavyweight gun, and it may shoot soft and nice. But what I've found is when that weight tends towards the muzzle of the gun, it tends to want to keep the muzzle still as I pull the trigger, sometimes worse than others. And we don't always pull the trigger perfectly, right? So, and this is no secret. Like, look at bullseye guys. They could care less about how their gun recoils. What do they all use? Like they use big, heavy guns with big, heavy barrels. Why? Why would they care? It's because a bunch of weight in the muzzle keeps the muzzle still while you pull the trigger. But if your gun gets too heavy, and this is again just for me, if the gun gets too heavy in overall total weight, it becomes kind of obnoxious to draw and move around from target to target. So then there's a balance of like, okay, what total weight do I like a gun at to where I don't feel like it's obnoxious to carry around all day, draw, and transition from target to target? And then given the parameters of like, okay, I want a gun that weighs, pick a number, between 40 and 45 ounces. Great. Where, like now that that's your total weight, where do you want that weight to be? Would you rather have more of it here or more of it there? Do you like a heavier slide that feels softer or a lighter slide that moves faster? Because they're different. Do you like more muzzle weight? Do you like more grip weight? Do you whatever. So yeah, I've played around with weight on a gun a lot to know that like I like a kind of heavy, but not crazy heavy mid-weight. I just bought a new gun actually a couple of weeks ago. An AXG Pro, still a 320, but instead of shooting a Legion, I actually switched to the aluminum frame gun just because I like the way that aluminum frame feels so much in my hand, just the straight ergos of it. And I feel like, with just G10 grips and a flashlight on there, it's just barely under 40 ounces. It's 39 and change. And it's like, okay, well, total weight is not heavy. I don't think most people would think in competition circles that a 39-ounce gun is heavy, because it's not that heavy, but it's not light. It's not a Glock 17 either. Like it's mid-weight, and the weight is balanced forward. It's not crazy nose heavy, but it's not as nose heavy as taking a straight up polymer framed gun and putting a big heavy flashlight or tungsten guide. That's really nose heavy. But it's like, okay, it's mid-weight and balance is kind of forward. And I've found that, like, for me, that's really comfortable. But you'll hear people talk about like total weight of the gun, like, oh, you can't shoot it once it hits 50 ounces. Your transition speed's off. It's like, tell that to all the open guys with 55-ounce guns that put 30-round magazines in. Like, that's 55 ounces empty. Then they put a 30-round magazine in it. It's like, it's balanced, man. Like, 50 ounces isn't 50 ounces. If it's 50 ounces, but it's all in the muzzle, that thing's going to transition terrible. But if it's 50 ounces and it's fairly well balanced, probably not. If it's 40, like if it's muzzle heavy, but then you're in that mid 40 range, then maybe that would transition worse than if it were heavier and not so muzzle heavy. It's all, I think people talk a lot about total weight of a gun, like how much that thing weigh. It's like, yeah, it's not heavy or not that heavy. It's like, pick it up and feel it and shoot it. And, how does it feel when you shoot it?
Right. Like I went straight from like a 20 some odd, like I put some brass and some tungsten in my G17, but and then I switched to an open gun. So going from like a mid to high 20s ounce gun to a 53-ounce gun at minimum. Yeah. It's like, holy shit, this thing's I had to do curls so I could fucking carry my gun around. But it's crazy. Although Steiner's DWX weighs more than my open gun.
Yeah, I haven't shot it yet, but I've played with it at a safety table. It feels great, and it's crazy heavy. I personally would never go that heavy on a gun, at least not a 9mm. I can't. But he didn't. If you talk to him about it, it's not like he's into it. He thinks it's cool, and it is cool. He didn't do it because he thinks it's like the coolest thing. Like, oh, if I get this 58-ounce or this 64-ounce gun, it's going to shoot so flat. He did it kind of to prove a point. Like, it's almost a troll. It's almost a troll gun. Like, look at all the stupid shit you can do to this thing, and how flat and how silly and how heavy can you get it. And that's not to say it isn't nice, because it is nice, but it is also tongue-in-cheek. It's also a troll, and he knows it. It's intentional.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. It was interesting to get used to that, go from that drastic ends of the pool, right? The super light gun to the super heavy gun. But I didn't find that my transition, like I've been shooting a lot of steel challenges this winter just to get rounds on the gun.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like that my transitions really have all, differ too much from shooting a super light gun to the heavier gun, which was kind of nice. So, but it feels more, at least for me, the weight's more in the back end of the gun.
Right.
But, and I blame the wonderful steel and metal grip that I have on there. So
yeah, there's no one answer, man. And a lot of it is, I honestly think a lot of it is the fact that still to this day, the one gun that I have the most rounds through is a plastic gripped STI Edge. Well, that's a 40-ounce gun that's as muzzle heavy as they come. It just is, because it's got a long dust cover and a real bull barrel and a heavy ass slide and a plastic grip and an aluminum magwell. So that is still the gun that I have the most rounds on because I shot it exclusively for years and years. The Legion's getting close. They're almost the same. But the Legion went through a bunch of iterations. It's had a red dot, it's had not a red dot, it's had a flashlight, it hasn't had a flashlight, it's had tungsten and brass, come and go. Whereas the Edge, it basically stayed the same. Other than my propensity to change out mag wells. I've always had a thing for changing out mag wells.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
Other than that, it's a fine line between like big enough to help you reload well, but not so big that it affects your grip. That was always my thing. Like those big, gigantic mag wells, like they kind of pushed my hands in spots that I didn't really want them to. So I ended up with a smaller one over time. But that may be, back to the old point, that may very well be why I like a gun that's like kind of 40-ish ounces and muzzle heavy. That just feels like home to me. It feels very normal. Like, once you put a loaded mag in this, it's not muzzle heavy anymore. Now it's just heavy, but it's not so heavy. I had my prod gun up to 52 ounces at one point, empty, and I hated it. It never shot worse.
Yeah.
I would say. Yeah, I mean, if you were going to pick it up off a table and shoot a plate rack standing still, it's amazing. Godlike. It barely moves. But if you had to draw it and transition it, like for me at least, it was like, thing feels like a pig. It's like and again, this is all feel stuff. It felt like transitions were taking, 10, 20% longer. They felt very sluggish to gain like a very small amount on perceptible movement and split time. So it was just instantly apparent to me that it's like fun, cool that I can do it, I guess, not gonna last. Like no way I would actually run a gun this heavy for any amount of time, at least not in 9mm. Like not for me.
Right. Yeah. Now, but Lord have mercy. Back to your Edge. How many barrels did you go through on that Edge?
One. Same. What? It's still same barrel.
What?
Same barrel, and it's had. I honestly don't know how many rounds it has through it. It was my main gun for 3 or 4 years when I was shooting a lot. I still shoot a lot, but like I was shooting a lot. There's no way it doesn't have at least 80,000-90,000 rounds. Maybe it has 100 or so. And honestly, it still runs, it still groups. It's great. I love that gun.
Yeah, and there's just something about guns that just are like that just talk to you too, right?
Yeah, and other people like that gun because I always ran Kydex holsters. I ran race holsters a little bit before I realized I don't like them. I'm just not any faster out of them, and it's one more thing to kind of remember locking it and unlocking it. So, and at that time too, I switched between single stack and limited. So it was like, I'll just get used to Kydex and I'll just get used to having it in single stack position, like which at that time was not, high front strap above the belt. I still run my stuff like that because I'm just used to it. I've tried dropping it down and dry firing and leaving it there for a month and trying to get used to it to see if it was any faster. Not for me. So, but the Edge, other people like it because there's like no finish left on the slide at all. Like it just looks like a gun that has 100,000 rounds through it and a lot of dry fire. So yeah, I love that gun. That's probably the one gun I would never sell. Like I'd sell all the other ones. I don't care. But it's like, that was my first like purpose built competition gun. The gun I made Grandmaster with. Like I'd sell them all before I sold that one, even though I have no intention of shooting it.
And probably nobody would buy it off of you because it's
not worth anything.
Right. Although for maybe a nostalgia sake for some people, because it's like you can't get that no more.
It still shoots great. Like there's no reason to not get it, but like, yeah, it's not worth enough for me to want to get rid of it.
Right. Well, and darn you, Staccato STI, for ditching us and then wanting us back.
Yeah. That whole thing is so lame.
It is. Well, especially like shit when everybody has everyone had one at one time like that, a DVCO. And that's like, well, shit, now I can't use my used DVCO that I bought off of somebody. I can't go do anything with now because I broke it or something.
Well, I mean, STI used to be the easiest brand to preach to people about, like to get behind, because it's like, hey, listen, they're expensive, but they're not crazy. Like you can get an Edge for $2,000. That's what it was. Like you can get an Edge for $2,000. They don't really need that much stuff done to them. At that time, again, limited was the biggest division. like by a mile. Prod was big too, but limited was the biggest division. And it was a perfectly competitive gun, and their warranty was like killer. And then now it's not that way. So, and maybe there's reasons for that. Who knows? Maybe they were losing their ass off warranty claims, or ultimately what it looks like is that there just wasn't enough. There wasn't enough market share in building USPSA guns versus building guns for what they do now. And in a business sense, they weren't wrong. They were very, very right. But to now say like, oh, we make us a division because we want back in, it's like, you guys left, like you guys left. But
no, I
limited optics is the future.
Well,
are we gonna get there? Are we ready to get there?
We're gonna talk about that in a bit, but I gotta work up to that because
get there later.
I gotta get salty about it. But no, so oh Lord, now I totally lost my train of thought. But I guess so. You still shoot a lot. You've said this. Do you still get to dry fire a lot, or is it kind of been reduced because of the family life?
Yeah, the last couple of years, I went pretty hard all the way through 2020, like into like late 2020. Then had some like just personal family stuff, and also ammo at that time was like not impossible, but so hard to come by. Primers, and I went into hibernation mode, I think like a lot of people did. It's time to come back out of that. I'm ready to come out of that mode and start shooting. I have been shooting more and practicing more and shooting more major matches. I should be more motivated to dry fire than I am. I still dry fire every week, at least once or twice, but it's not that regimented. And to be completely honest, I'm not sure how productive it is either, because I basically just do it so the gun doesn't feel foreign in my hands when I go shoot. That's the honest truth. I spend, I don't know, grand total of 15 minutes to an hour a week, I would say, dry firing. And it's just pretty freeform, draws, reloads, transitions, could take a couple of steps here and there. It's mostly so when I go to the range, the gun feels normal and good in my hand.
So so what would you say your live fire schedule's like then?
Well, it's been less for the last couple of years, but what it seems like it's leveling out to is I want to shoot the gun at least once a week every week. I'd like to be at twice a week every week, but I want to shoot the gun live fire at least once a week every week. That may be a match. It may be practice. I'd like it if it was both. It seems like more often than not, like we have a lot of local matches out here. 3, sometimes 4 a month. There's one that tends to get canceled often due to low participation, but 3 solid USPSA matches a month. And I tend to practice live fire more weeks than I don't. So like probably three or 4 times, probably really closer to 5 times in a month, I'll do live fire practice. And then usually 3 local matches a month. And a local match is 150 rounds average, and live fire practice, I usually shoot 300 or so. About 3 or 350. So whatever that ends up being, plus majors.
Right. Well, it's nice to see that you're still shooting, but what goals do you currently have with your current level of participation?
Yeah. It mattered to me for a while. It still matters. I want to make GM in carry optics, although I am going to have to think about what I want to do when limited optics becomes a thing, because now that's happening, and it's happening fairly soon. It's going to start May 1st. I originally thought to myself, I'll stay in CO until I make GM, and then I'll move over to limited optics. And then it's like, why? Why does that matter? Why do that? Why does that matter? Just to prove to myself I can do it? Like, no offense, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I know I can do it. I've already done it 3 times. It's just an amount of practice that I either choose to do or not. It's really that simple. To Steve Anderson, it's like there's X amount of hours until you achieve your goal. You just don't know what that number is. It's like, yeah, totally. Like it's X amount of hours until, but then it's like, okay, well, if I think that limited optics is going to be what carry optics is now in a handful of years, why not just slap a magwell on my gun and make the switch. Like,
Right.
why make GM in one just to be like, nobody else cares. Like, I'm going to get, what am I going to get? Thumbs up on Facebook? Like, good job.
Yeah.
Whatever. So part of me wants to do it just for like unfinished business. And the other part of me is just like, whatever. So goals for the year. That was, I bring that up because that was a goal for the year. Like, this year I'm gonna make GM and CO, and now it's like maybe, because maybe I'll just switch to limited optics because I think that's where everything's gonna go. And it sounds like they're gonna use open high hit factors for limited optics, which is crazy. Like, that makes no sense. Just use CO like high hit factors and let them grow over time, because they will. Because there's race holsters and magwells, but like it's 99% the same.
Right,
It
you're
is,
doing one reload on the whole classifier anyway. It's like,
dude, it's so, and the truth is, the high hit factor is being set by the 10 best runs that ever happened on that. The magwell made zero difference on the 10 best runs that ever happened, because the 10 best reloads that ever happened on that stage didn't touch the magwell anyway. They went straight in the gun. That's the honest truth. And the 10 best draws that ever happened on that stage weren't affected by the fact that they were out of Kydex instead of out of a race holster. Not the average draw, not the average reload, but the 10 best ones didn't matter at all. You know what I mean? So it's like, guys, ye men, if you're listening to this, just use CO high hit factors and let them grow over time, which they will. But starting with open high hit factors is asinine. They are not open guns.
yeah, well, yeah, I agree with that. But so are you going to just take your Legion and slap a magwell on it, or are you going to get a magwell for your AXG then?
Yeah, I've switched over to, I mean, I just shot my very first match with the AXG, and I've shot some practices and stuff. So far, I really like it. Yeah, it has a magwell. I'm just going to put that on there.
There you go.
Yeah, we can get into that when we talk about limited optics, because is my opinion. I try hard to be like, I'm an opinionated guy, but like, it's just for me, I just know what's true for me. I know 100% that for me, I don't shoot a 1911 or 2011 better than I shoot a 320. And I imagine that would be the same with trigger time on a Canic, trigger time on a Shadow 2. I imagine it'd be the same, but I don't know. So for me, it's like there's no purpose for me to switch over to a new platform or to the platform that I used to use if I don't believe that I'll get a performance advantage for it. So I'm just not going to. I'm just going to put a magwell on the gun and shoot it in limited optics, because I think limited optics is going to end up being the thing.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it, because honestly, limited optics shouldn't even be a thing. It should just be, let's fix the divisions, because that's really what the problem is. We don't need 9 divisions. We've said this for 3 years now.
Yeah, I've said it a lot.
I mean, I think that's one of the biggest talking points you've had on the internet, is telling people that we need to get rid of divisions, or at least consolidate, because
it started selfishly with low cap divisions. Like, dude, we got too many of them, and we all look at the overall anyway. Yeah. Like, if the single stack shooter at whatever said area match or even local match beats the prod shooter, you don't think that they don't see that and know that it's like, okay, I know it's not apples to apples, but it's like, it's basically apples to apples. It's pretty much apples to apples. They know, like, they're already shooting against each other. We shouldn't have that, single stack and prod and L10 and Revo for that matter. It's like half the divisions. It's like, you could just make them one. Change the rules a little bit. Say these ones can have magwells and those ones can't. And say they can't have sight trackers if you think that's a thing, or slide rackers if you think that's a thing. Whatever you think is a thing. Say they can't have it. Say they can have it. Whatever. I tend to err on the side of being permissive. Like, yeah, you can have a thumb rest on your P320 or your CZ if you want it. Like, have you shot one with it or without it? It makes zero difference. It's just your thumb either hangs out or has a little place to sit on. Take your pick.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter.
Well, an L10 should just be chucked out to the wayside, because it makes no sense nowadays. It made sense when they originally made it, when people were still shooting single stacks versus double stack 40, double stack guns back in the day when they first came out. But nowadays in 2023, it makes no sense unless someone wants to go seek a trophy in some division at nationals.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for stopping in the middle of this episode with Mr. Kenny Platt, formerly of the Perfect Double and Make Ready podcast. it's been a good one to talk to Kenny. I've heard his voices for long enough. But anyway, let's get to the commercial because it's awesome. It's Go Fast Don't Suck. It's our title sponsor of the podcast. They go fast and they don't suck. They did awesome. This one's being edited. You're gonna find out in real time the day of the last day of the Michigan sectional that I ran. So, but we had Go Fast Don't Suck banners on the bays, and they were awesome. They held up great, and they withheld the winds and the rain, and they were awesome, and they're affordable. So go check them out. GoFastDon'tSuck.net. Hunters HD Gold. They're the premier eyewear of USPSA Steel Challenge. Go check them out. Brian's awesome. He's at many major matches, and it definitely improves everyone being there. So hey, go check out huntershdgold.com. Get yourself some glasses. You'll need them. Thank me later. Try before you buy if you see Brian at a major match. But anyway, dominatedefense.com. Go over there. Use the code Manny Talks 10 for 10% off your Mach 1 speedbelt combo orders. They're great. They sponsored my match this weekend as well. They're fabulous. I gave away 2 on the prize table to the staff, so that's always a good thing right there, here and there. Can't forget my friend over Nathan Dively over at Div Tech. Go over to divtechshop.com. Use the code Manny Talks Shooting for 10% off your whole order there. So that's going to be freaking awesome. Oh, no, I got the coughs. This is a pain in the butt. But anyway, we're going to keep rolling with the commercial as is because I don't care. Don't forget my friends Tony and Jackie over at Laugh and Load, the Pew Time podcast. They host an awesome podcast as well as some merch. They host my merch, the Manny Talk Shooting official t-shirts there currently, and it's awesome. Go buy an AFT agent shirt. Go get a Supreme Division Open Division shirt because the Supreme Division is Open Division. We can't forget my buddy Eric Steiner, Johnny Giordano of RangePanda.com. They also sponsored my match, so they were there. They supported us. They make awesome CNC products, 3D printed projects, everything you might need. They have it on their website. Targets USA manufactures the finest steel targetry on the planet. I say it. Steve Anderson says it, so it must be true because I'm always right. No, I'm not. Don't ask me. Don't ask my wife because she'll say I'm wrong. Just to prove a point. Don't forget TimHeronShooting.com, guys. Go ahead and check him out. He's got a full class schedule probably for this year and next year, but hey, you can get on a class schedule sometime soon. Check him out, TimHeronShooting.com. Find a class near you. Also can't forget Outdoor Dynamics. They also sponsored the sectional because I asked them to. Anyway, John, he pulls the handle so you don't have to at Outdoor Dynamics. Use the code there, Manny, MANNY, for 5% off your order. So use code Manny and save yourself some money, and I can't complain about that. Also, we've got Summit City Bullets. They've come on now. You can use the code MTS10% and get 10% off your order at Summit City Bullets. You can get your 115s all the way to your 160 grain bullets. So you can go check them out. Different coatings, different colors. If you want to be accessorizing, that's the way to do it. So anyways, guys, also don't forget Chile Custom Gunworks. Tell them Manny sent you on that one, and just let them know that those L2 grips, those E2 grips, they'll go great on your Prodigy, your Staccato. You want it. You know it. You need that metal grip. So go check them out, guys. But anyway, let's get back to this awesome episode, Mr. Ken.
I think there are things that there are a handful of things that are important enough that they make sense to base divisions on, like optics or not optics, compensated or not compensated, major or minor, high capacity or low capacity. Those are things that make enough difference. I mean, obviously, there's no doubt, right? Even if you're a better shooter by a lot, say you're a better shooter than, better than the guy that you're competing against by like 10, 15%, maybe even 20%, but 10, 15% better. And I have a revolver. That's an extreme example. I have a prod gun and you have an open gun. You're going to beat me because your gear is worth 10 or 15% easy. You don't have to reload. You don't have to aim, which I like to say that about dots. You don't have to reload. You don't have to aim, or you follow the dot. You get major power factor scoring. Like, it's not the same. It's not the same game. But you can't tell me it's not the same game if I have a 2011 that has a 1.5 pound trigger. Hey, whatever trigger you want. A 2011 that has a 1.5 pound or a 2 pound trigger, or a P320 that has a 1.5 pound or a 2 pound trigger, or a Glock that has a 1.5 pound or a 2 pound trigger, or a Shadow 2 that has a 1.5 pound or a 2 pound trigger. They're the same. It shouldn't matter if one of you flips off a thumb safety or one of you has a safety built into the first 1/4 inch of travel of your finger, or like, it doesn't matter. But we still have a bunch of divisions based on the old belief, because I think at one point it did matter, but I don't think we're there anymore. So like, we have a bunch of divisions based on the old belief that it mattered. You couldn't commingle or shouldn't commingle single action only guns with striker fire and double action single action guns. And in 2023, it doesn't matter anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Just doesn't. So it's not that I think, like, I say let CO die, let single stack and prod die, let them die, and just say this is optics division. Or you could call it limited optics if you want. And if you think that sight tracker barrels or slide rackers or specific things are like, oh, you can't have that because you can't get it on all the guns or most of the guns, and it's a huge advantage. Like, I don't personally think those things are a huge advantage, but maybe somebody does, and maybe the governing body, maybe USPSA does, then explicitly disallow those features. There's nothing that says you're writing a new division from scratch. It's nothing that said, that says that you can't say that, just because it has been allowed in limited of past, like Iron Sight normal limited, doesn't mean that they couldn't say in Carry Optics 2.0 or in limited optics or in whatever they want to call it, you can't have a sight block, or you can't have a sight tracker barrel, you can't have a thumb rest that is bolted to the frame of the gun, or you can't. It's like, you could say that. Again, I don't think that you should say that, but like, yeah,
right. And there's so many things that it doesn't really matter. Like you said, the trigger doesn't matter. It more depends on what the shooter can actually do at this point. With technology is so changed, like you've got pre-cock striker Glocks now coming from the factory. I mean, it's like, and MMP's been doing it forever, and your fancy whiz bang, don't drop my sig trigger.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really matter. And like, sure, as a the magwell doesn't honestly matter at this point because you're doing one reload a stage anyway.
Bro, all these guns come with magwells anyway.
Well, yeah.
My gun came with a magwell. My last gun came with a magwell. The Canet comes with a magwell. The new MMP comes with a magwell. They all come with magwells, and they have to take them off to shoot them in CO. All these guns, and if they don't come with a magwell, they're $50 away. You can get one in any, color of the rainbow that is your favorite. Like,
as long as it's black.
Who cares? Yeah,
right.
Who cares?
Mm-hmm. Well, everyone's going to say it's a gear race, but I mean, it doesn't matter if the new Whizbang comes out tomorrow. Everyone's going to go buy it. So it doesn't mean if it's a 2011 or if it's some Whizbang trigger for your MMP, a Canik, whatever, people are going to buy it. They're going to spend stupid money on stupid shit anyway.
No, see, the gear race comes, in my opinion, when you have like the old school production rules. And this maybe is a hot take, because there's a lot of people that are like, we need to make production how it was. If it comes on the gun, it's like, no, you don't want to do that. Because if you do that, you're at the behest of what the manufacturer chooses this year to put on their gun, not what you can do to your own gun or what the aftermarket allows you to do to your own gun. So instead of saying, oh, I want my gun to be a little heavier, or I wish I had better texture on it, or I wish I had an extended mag release or a smaller slide stop or a whatever, you can just, under the current rules, do all the stuff that you want to do to your gun. And maybe it went too far. I think it did go too far in a handful of ways, but whatever. Maybe it went too far. But the gun that broke the whole it's got to be out of the box thing is kind of twofold, was the Shadow 2 and the P320. Because the P320, they couldn't tell what came out of the box anymore. Because it's like, hey, this FCU, this is the gun. So what's the grip that came with it? Because you don't know, and I don't know. Like, I've switched around my FCUs so many times in my handful of 320s. I don't know which one's which. They have a home and they all work. And it's like, you tell me which ones. I don't know which one's which. So can I use the gun or not? It's like, yeah, okay, I guess it's fine. And I know the whole history behind the hammer, the external hammer and the one RO at whatever major match it was, couldn't tell the difference, or the story has gotten convoluted over the years, but apparently there was a guy with an illegal hammer and a competitor called him out on it, and the RO didn't feel comfortable making the call, or maybe they did make the call. I can't remember if they did or didn't make the call. And then Troy gives a presentation about which hammer's which, and the board goes, we can't tell. But the problem is, I think the real gear race comes when you say, if the manufacturer puts it on the gun, that's okay. You can't change anything. It's like, well, that means every 2 years, when whatever your favorite company is makes your gun a little bit better, you have to sell your old one and buy a new one, instead of just saying, oh, great, I can just upgrade my M&P trigger. Here's an example. I can upgrade my M&P trigger from the super curved hingy one to the new one that has a dingus like everybody else's striker fired trigger, right? If you had an old M&P, you couldn't just upgrade that trigger to an aftermarket one or even just a newer stock one. You'd have to be like, well, guess I got to sell my gun and buy a new one until they come out 2 years later with one that, oh man, this one has better forward cocking serrations that actually don't eat up my hand that I can use. Got to sell this gun. Better go buy the new one. To me, that's the real gear race, right? It's like in open and limited, the divisions with barely any rules. Yeah, I mean, you could call it a gear race because people want to use nice gear, but none of their stuff is becoming obsolete. You just add to it over time as your tastes and the aftermarket grow and change. That's so much easier than having to sell the old one and buy the new one and sell the old one and buy the new one.
Right. Exactly. And I think it was, well, when ROs or people even, working, gear check or whatever, then we remember the people, ROs already can't count. Like we already went over this discussion. Counting to 10 rounds is arbitrary at this point because nobody can count. But
what do you think about limited optics?
Limited optics. I'll say this from the aspect of an open shooter. I don't give a fuck because I'm shooting open.
Totally.
It's like I don't give a fuck. I'm shooting my division. Like y'all can do what you want to do, but
what do you think about USPSA adding a 9th division that is basically a Scooby-Doo mask away from being carry optics? Like it's the same shit.
Oh no, put it into carry optics. I said this on my survey. It's like just put it in. Like sure. Like they get a magwell, doesn't matter. Okay, they get a questionably better trigger, right? They're all gonna have dots. They all, you're all gonna draw from a holster. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. The guy who put in the most effort, who has the most skill, is gonna win. Not or the guy's gun who didn't fuck up, because that's always a thing too. If someone's gun having a barf day, it doesn't matter if it's a Glock, SIG, or a 2011. Gun's got to run at the end of the day.
Hasn't history proven that striker fired guns cannot compete? They cannot compete against high dollar single action only 2011 guns. Haven't we seen that year over year in limited division?
Let me show my friend Nils here, or Rob Vogel, or Shane Coley.
Going. Yep. Keep going. Mason.
Oh, yeah. Mason
won
Lane.
2 years in a row, and then Nils won it with a minor gun.
Yeah. Plastic guns still work, guys.
And here's the thing. It's not an argument. There's different arguments. This is where people get it conflated. It's a different argument to say that it's as good versus saying it's good enough. As good. No, it's not. Like, I admit it. And I shoot for these companies, right? A couple of them, right? Like that trigger, the best trigger you can get in a P320 by the metrics that people use to judge trigger, how much pre-travel, how much over travel, how much total weight, how much, length of reset. By those metrics, objectively not as good. But is it good enough? Yes, they are good enough in my hands and many other people's hands. And it's been proven at a national level many times. It's not just once or twice. It hasn't been a fluke. Many times. So it's just with that amount of data, don't conflate as good with good enough. The triggers that you can get on striker fired and double action, single action, hammer fired guns absolutely are good enough that they don't need a special carve out division. So if USPSA thinks that it's important to let 2011s and other single action only guns have a place to play and be competitive that shoot 9mm and have a slide right optic, don't give them their own division to do it. Just incorporate them into the others. But the way that I foresee it happening is the opposite of that. They're going to say, no, we can't do that. We have to give them their own division, which is what they've already done. And then I believe what will happen over time is that CO will go away organically. And it may not actually go away on paper, but I think enough people will go, well, I like race holsters and my gun came with a magwell and half of my friends shoot limited optics and we're all next to each other in the overall anyway. I'll just shoot limited optics with my carry optics gun. And then over time, and it'll take a couple of years, over time, carry optics will become less than it was, and limited optics will essentially effectively replace it. At which point you just say, bye-bye, let carry optics go. Or you change carry optics enough that you actually make it a different test. Like you say, okay, back to 45-ounce weight limit, or you could go crazy and even go lighter than that. You could have like an actual polymer gun division. You could say 40 ounces or 35 ounces, whatever. Like back to like a reasonable weight limit, back to 15 rounds in the magazine, which was never a thing, but 10 was, and then whatever. You could create that. And again, I'm not saying that this should happen. I'm just saying the way that I think it will go is that if CO doesn't change and go backwards, it will die, because it's almost limited optics, and limited optics is going to pull some new shooters, but mostly limited and open guys. It's going to pull open guys that have broken enough shit on their open guns that they don't want to deal with it anymore. And it's going to pull limited guys that are tired of 40 and shooting 40 brass and love 2011s and love their race holster and love their gun manufacturer and love their trigger, but have been dot curious. It's going to pull those guys and the CO guys that want to go play with them. Like me, I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to put a magwell on my gun and shoot limited optics.
Right. Well, and that's the thing too, is like people are just going to be like, well, I'm going to slap magwell on my Legion, my Shadow 2, whatever. And whatever they're going to do, they're going to do it. Because at the end of the day, they don't care. They just want to be they want to be comparable to everybody. And honestly, I kind of would agree with just, it's going to go away organically, because people are all going to like, there's going to be like this bro code, I want to call it, right? Like, it's like, we're all going to shoot the same division. We might not change our guns at all, but we're all going to be a man about it and compete head to head in like limited optics or whatever, because it can.
Yeah.
But it'll be nice to see. I would love to see actually if the org was able, or matches were able to put out, if you signed up for limited optics, is your gun a legal carry optics gun normally?
Plus magwell. Yeah.
Plus magwell, like that Bill Duda
yeah.
meme, right? Is like, which I think is actually going to happen. Like I can predict that's what my prediction is. It's like, we're just going to shoot carry optics legal guns in limited optics with a magwell or not. Some people won't give a shit because they already have so many thousands of reps doing reloads without a magwell. They don't give a crap.
It's not about that though. Like to me, it's about, and it's different for different people, but like I only switched to CO to have more people to shoot against and to shoot. It wasn't just that, but it was mostly that. The other reason was the way that my temperament as a person and as a shooter lends itself to minor power factor scoring. That's why limited, like I'd play in it and I love to have that many people to shoot against. And I always did well, but not great in limited, is because I tend to be like pretty fast and more accurate than average. And that's great for a minor power factor division. And like, it's just going to get you smoked in limited, because especially as the competition gets better and better, and the hit factors go higher and higher and higher, mathematically, your time counts more and more and more, and your points count less and less and less. That's just the way the math works. But that said, like, I think that limited optics will end up being the common ground. That's what you're saying. It's like, maybe I'll put a magwell on my gun, maybe I won't. Like, I personally will, because like it came with it and it's just sitting in my range bag. So of course I'll put it on there. But like, maybe for somebody else, maybe I'll, I have a Shadow 2, maybe I'll learn to start cocked and locked, or maybe I won't, because I'm already used to the double action first pull. Maybe I'll change to a race holster, or maybe I won't. But it's like, everybody wants a common place to go compete. And I think that limited optics being just that slightly wider net, but not so wide, it's not open, right? You can't like bring a current CO gun and just get smoked because you don't have an open gun. That's the thing, is like, if you have a current CO gun that is good, then you have a good LO gun. Like, you do. It is good. You may do literally one or two things to it. You may be like, oh, great. Well, now that I have my Shadow 2, now that I don't have to DA my first pull, I'll put that flat trigger that I love in there and put that bigger safety on it and just learn to turn the safety off and slap a magwell on it. It's like, great. Where's the disadvantage in that gun to a $8,000 Atlas? Like, there isn't any. They literally, the great gun, super cool gun. Where's the disadvantage? It's not there. And I found from my own shooting, and this is where it's hard to like conflate with other people. Like, this is just for me. I shoot a trigger, like pull the trigger on a 320, which is twice as long and not as crisp as a 2011, exactly the same. as I do on a 1911 or 2011. So for me, making the switch back to that other platform just doesn't gain any advantage. Like I split them the same. I used to not, but like even still now, it's like split them the same. I group them the same. I shoot them under pressure the same. Why would I switch?
Mhm.
There's just no reason. And some
Right.
people aren't that way. Some people, they're more trigger sensitive. And that's cool.
Well, and then you have to think about reinvestment too. Like just like the think about the cost of having to reinvest in a whole new 2011 limited optics gun. Like you got to go find a 9mm gun because you're not going to slap a dot on your edge because
No.
that'd be insane because you don't get major power factor.
Yeah, they're going to be sick. I can't wait to shoot them. I'm a gear guy. I can't help it, man. I love cool stuff. Like I can't wait to shoot them, but I won't switch because I've done it enough. Like it won't be any different than the difference between my Dan Wesson and my Legion in iron sights. Like it's the same. It's the same thing. It's like, hey, here's the nice steel one that was built well. I mean, maybe it'll be different if it's like an Infinity or something, but like even still, like I've shot those guns. They're great, but like it's still just a gun. It's still like, did you see the dot or the sight and pull the trigger? Okay. Yep. Great. Did you hit the target? Yep. Cool. Did it recoil and do its thing and then stop moving around so you could do it again? Yep. Awesome.
Yeah.
It's still just a gun.
Exactly. It's still got sights. It's still got a trigger. You still got to grip the shit out of it and slap it. Right. Like,
yep.
That's pretty much how it goes. Like, I mean, I don't know many people who will talk. I don't know. I mean, maybe they do, but they talk about trigger control. But it seems more enough. It's like you grip the shit out of the gun. It's not going to move. You just grip the shit out of the gun and you pull the trigger. You could kind of pull it like a jackass depending on what target you're looking at.
Well, it depends. It depends on how heavy your gun is. It depends on where the weight is. It depends on the weight of your trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say grip the shit out of your gun, that's relative to other people. Because when Charlie Perez grips the shit out of his gun, is more than when you or I grip the shit out of my gun. Because that man is a bear.
Yeah, like I got large size hands, but I ain't got no like jumbo tornado hands that he fucking
exactly. So it's a different thing. Like there's no doubt that if you have a heavier gun and you grip it harder and you have a shorter, lighter trigger, that you can get away with murder. You can get away with murder on what your input can be into the trigger and not have it move around. There's no doubt about that. My argument is it's not action type dependent. Mm-hmm. It's not striker fire versus hammer fire versus single action hammer fire dependent. It's just not. Like there's other things that matter way more. I'd say weight of the gun matters way more. I think you'd see more difference in shooting a 25-ounce gun or even a 30-ounce gun versus a 50-ounce gun with the same trigger type than you would two 50-ounce guns or two 30-ounce guns with different trigger types. Like if you made the disparity 20 ounces of weight, I think that the average shooter would see more difference than if you made the disparity type of trigger.
Yes, I could agree with that on
It's
that.
a big difference. It's a big difference between shooting a 30-ounce gun and a 50-ounce gun. It's not so big when you're talking like, what about 40 versus 45? It's like, your preference depends on where the weight is. Which one do you like better? Does one feel better in your hand? But with a big difference in weight, it's like, oh no, like a Glock 17 at 26 ounces or whatever it is does not shoot like a Shadow 2. They just don't. They don't do like, and that's not to say that a really good shooter can't manhandle it and make it do what they want it to do. Of course they can. The best shooter always wins. But like, there's a big difference in half the weight. Like that's a way bigger difference than does your trigger move an 1/8 of an inch or a 1/16 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch? Like, whatever.
Right, exactly. Yeah. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. But like we said, the best shooter is going to win regardless. And his name will probably be Nils Jonassen. I'm going to
probably, dude. Nils is going to win no matter what.
Yep.
And if action type made that, here's what a great example. I mean, talk about, and I get it. And we're not just talking about switching guns because he also became a fully sponsored pro shooter and has all that at his disposal. But talk about a guy that like, yeah, he shot Glocks and stuff too, but Nils was very well known for shooting 2011s and 19, at least one single stack nationals. I don't know how many times, one limited nationals a bunch, did most of it with the 2011 and got picked up by Canik to shoot a striker fired gun. And of course has all the advantages of somebody that does that professionally. That said, it's not like it took him forever to accommodate to that different type of gun. Like dude started winning pretty much right away. And now has gone on a complete world domination tour He wins everything he looks at.
Yeah, he's a savage, and he's a freaking athletic giraffe.
Yeah, Nils is cool, and he's a super nice guy.
Yeah. So what we need to do is we need to get Nils, but we got to put Tim Herron on Nils's shoulders, so it'll be the nicest person in shooting, and they'll be even taller.
Mm-hmm.
But then Tim will feel like, hey, Dad, can we go get a balloon over there?
Tim, poor Tim. You know, the first thing I said to Tim when I first met him in person, because we had talked a lot on the internet back and forth, and even called each other and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Tim, I thought you'd be shorter. Like, for getting so much shit for his height, it's not Danny DeVito. Like, he's not that short. He's not tall, but like, he's not that short. He's just like walk around in a store and see like he's probably one of the shorter men here, but he gets talked about on the internet like he's 4'9", and it's like he's not that short.
He's only like 5. He's got to be like 5'3".
No, he's not that short.
5'5".
He's
I
like
mean,
5.
I
don't.
know.
Now I feel bad, Tim. I'm standing up for you, first of all, but like I don't know how tall. He's somewhere in the realm of 5'5" to 5'7".
I don't know. I'm 5. Well, I don't care. I'm 5'8", and I'm taller than Tim, so that's all that matters.
He's somewhere in the realm of 5'5" to 5'7". I'd put money on it. I told him, like, Tim, I swear to God, I thought you'd be shorter. I thought you were gonna be like 5'1". I thought you were gonna look like my wife. And he's like, no.
Well, and then like
you're not that short to get so much shit.
Right, exactly. Now that would be scary if Tim was Danny DeVito short. That would be, or that guy. Or now you're old enough. You've seen the movie Willow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. At
It's
least he's
been a
not
long
that.
time.
At least he's not that like short.
Yeah.
But no, they made a Disney TV show on it now. It's like a series now.
On Willow?
Yeah. It's
No
yeah.
way.
Yeah, you'll have to check it out. I watched it. Well, it was first of all, I've never seen Willow before until I was like, oh, this looks interesting to watch. And I'm like, wait, stop. Go back, watch the fucking 78 movie and call it a day.
Yeah, I think I saw it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It was before my time. I was born in 86, but still.
I mean, same here. I mean, I'm younger than you, but I still watched it. It was pretty good. I give it a 7 out of 10 for still being an old ass movie. But let's see, man. I gotta. Oh, damn you, water bottle, get out of the way. Usually what the problem is. But I guess we're getting near the end of the show because
yeah.
But this has been fun. What do we got? Oh, other than not talking sponsors, but who have been some of your biggest mentors and supporters coming up in the sport?
Oh man. You know, the guy that I don't know that I've given him that much credit as far as like on podcasts and stuff, but I certainly do in person. There's a local shooter around here that he's certainly known in these parts, Matt Avancic. Really, really nice guy, limited shooter. That dude was just really kind and really helpful and let me, when I first started shooting for the first couple of years of shooting, just squad with him all the time and ask him all the questions so I could understand not just how, like you can watch somebody and understand what they're doing and how to do it. Like, oh, look how to move, you know, in this manner to enter on this target or to split at this speed or whatever. But he entertained many of my questions of why would you go left to right here? Why would you go right to left here? Why would you reload there instead of there? Why would you enter on this target instead of this one? Why are you backing out? Why? And yeah, that guy was probably, you know, other than my dad, you know, like as a young kid, but like as far as like being a pretty good shooter to a, you know, reasonably like better than just pretty good shooter, and learn how to make that step into, you know, master and grandmaster like territory to be able to win some stuff and break down stage as well. He was a huge influence. Anymore, I get to shoot with Yong Lee a lot. Yong's great. That was one of the reasons I wanted to switch to CO, was to have somebody good to be able to shoot against. And we go back and forth, you know. I know that if I do something silly, I'm probably not going to end up with the W for the day. Like fall. Like that was like the last one, which we didn't get into that on the podcast. But yeah, I had my first spill on the clock, which was very unfortunate. At the last match. It was a bummer. Who else? Steiner and I would say never really had that type of relationship. I'd say earlier on, earlier on, I progressed a little bit faster than he did. And then we kind of split and never really shot the same division. So we kind of went from like, he would pick my brain a little bit to he started really like practicing hard and getting very good. And then it was very equal and level and mutual. And yeah. And just went different ways. Like he went super hard and heavy into open while I had been spending years shooting prod. So it's like, you know, like your buddies and you're both good shooters. And it's like, if I pick up an open gun, I know you're going to beat me. And if you pick up a prod gun, I'm going to beat you. And, you know, I'd love for us to be able to shoot against each other in CO or LO and see what that dynamic is like. Because I think as far as like raw skills as a shooter, we're very similar to each other, both good shooters with different strengths and weaknesses. He's inherently faster and I tend to hit shit. And that it just literally would depend on the day, you know, the day and the stages, who's going to end up shooting better on that day. But like, not to not give him props, but like, we never really had that kind of like relationship. It was always more equal and buddy. Yeah. Tim, to be honest, like when I was coming up and wanting to make GM and single stack, Tim was really responsive on Instagram and Facebook and would entertain my questions back and forth and send challenges to each other and stuff. That's kind of how the dynamic of the podcast really started, was, you know, Eric taking Tim's class and Tim and I already having some rapport. And then, yeah, all getting together and meeting up and like, this is a fun dynamic. The three of us, we should take this to the internet. And it was fun. I honestly wish that the three of us still had time to do it. The truth is, for me, I feel like there was some magic to that group of three that kind of gave each other a lot of shit and bounced off of each other that I don't think would be there if it was just two, which is part of the reason why like Tim and I have talked about doing it. But it's like, yeah, but is it the same if we don't have Steiner to say the ridiculous shit that he does? You know, like probably not.
Right.
And that's probably it. I mean, not to, if I'm friends with you and we shoot together, we have shoot together in the past, please don't be offended. But those are the ones that stand out to me as people that I have like seen as like very close shooting friends or have really looked up to.
Yeah. Right. And if we named everybody we ever shot with, fuck, we'd never be like, that's where we'd have to start and we'd never get off of it. Right. Like,
yeah, I took a class from Ben Steger once, like 10 years ago. And he told me, I love this story. Have you ever heard this one? I've told it on podcast before.
It's probably been a minute, but you can tell it anyway.
So I took a Steger class when I was like maybe 6 months into shooting, like the third time, right? Like when I really started shooting, I was B class prod shooter shooting a Glock. And I asked him at the end of the 2-day class, I said, do you have anything for me, Ben? Like, what could I work on? And he looked at me and he said, I wish you ran faster. That was the advice that I paid for. And I'm like, yeah, no shit, bro. Me too. Is there anything shooting related maybe that I can work on? That was it. That was the feedback that I got. I wish you ran faster. Thanks, Ben. Me too.
Yeah. I wish I also had $1 million or was like 30 pounds lighter, but yeah, we'll get there, right?
I wish you ran faster. Thanks, man.
That needs to be on a t-shirt. It's just gotta be on a t-shirt. Or a coffee mug. That'd be good too. On a coffee mug, but on the bottom of your coffee mug. So when you like take a big gulp of it, it's right there on the bottom.
Yeah, I should put it on the back of my own jersey. I wish I ran faster.
That's a good one too.
Yeah.
Bill, I need a new print, by the way, buddy.
If anybody sends me a wish I ran faster shirt, I will not wear it. Just so you know, you will be wasting your money.
Yeah. Well, what happens if David Bland? Now, what happens said Big Dad Energy on the front?
BDE.
And then it said, I wish you ran faster.
I wish you ran faster. Yeah, no, I still wouldn't wear it, but it would make me laugh. Blanton's a good guy. I like that guy.
Yeah, I like David. David's a good dude. But I guess we're at this point. This is the part where you get to pay the bills for your lovely sponsors, so they feel some love.
Cool. Yeah. I've represented many people over the years. Currently, Black Bullets International. Chandler's a great guy. I've used a lot of different coated bullets over the years, and I've had honestly like the least amount of drama. of anybody I've ever like of any product maybe I've ever used. It's like you put them on the case and load them, and they do what they're supposed to do. And every time you order a box, they show up and they're exactly the same as the last box that you ordered. And it's like, hallelujah, because that's what everybody wants in reloading components, is exactly the same as last time. So BBI is great. Chandler's really cool. I have a code. I think it's on my Instagram. I don't know what it is.
It's like what, 7.5% or something like that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember what it is. I'm such a good sponsored shooter right now. I'm looking at my phone to remember my code so I don't give out the wrong one. This is the only code that I got. Platt BBI, PLATTBBI, 7.5% off.
It's a very odd percentage, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from. That's his percentage. But Chandler's a really good guy, and he's supported me for years, and his stuff is killer and consistent. Gray Guns, I use their triggers and other doodads on my guns. I have used them for a long time. Funny story about Gray Guns. I actually, maybe not funny, but like I did my own kind of testing before I did anything with any kind of gun manufacturer. I tried, I won't say who else's, but I tried other people at the time's P320 trigger offerings and other small part offerings, and was underwhelmed by them, and bought my own Gray Guns trigger. And then after that, ended up getting contacted by Bruce directly. It was like, hey, would you like to represent us? I'm like, yeah, your stuff's awesome. I already paid for it. He's like, I'll send you another one, So it's stuff that I've been using for years, and I stand behind wholeheartedly. GGI makes really good stuff. Red Hill Tactical as well. They've been doing it for a long time. Their holsters are killer. There are other people that make great holsters too. But I've been using Red Hill Tacticals for a long time, and I just haven't had a problem. They're always made well. I haven't broken one yet. They never come loose. They're good. And Dominate Defense. I've been using Dominate Defense belts for, about as long as he's been making them. We were talking about that before we started air. I kind of helped Jason come up with the first version of the steel lined outer belt, and preach the gospel of maybe your belt could be a little stiffer. And that has turned into what he's producing, and they are awesome. So yeah, those are my people.
Yep. And it's freaking awesome. And if anyone cares, Dominate Defense, Manny Talks 10, get 10% off your Mach 1.
Yeah, use your code. I don't have a code. Jason, if you hear this, give me a code and I'll give it out.
You know how hard it was for me to get my code?
That's the thing, is like I just tell people, I'm like, hey, if you ever talk to these people, it'd be great if you let them know that you heard about them from me. But quite frankly, no offense, if any company requires me to like prove my value, like, you better send 20 people a year to us and use your code, it's like, see you later. Like, I'm not good. I'm not in this for like, nobody's making, money off of this stuff. These are just companies that I already use their stuff. Like I bought my first, actually every single company. I bought my first BBIs. I bought my first Gray Guns trigger. I bought my first, and maybe second, I think, Red Hill Tactical holster. And I bought my first Dominate belt. I bought it because this was stuff I already wanted to use. And then ultimately ended up talking to the owner of the company and being like, yeah, your stuff's great. I already bought it. So I'd love to represent you. If I need a new one, send me one. That'd be great. Thumbs up. That's the way to do it. For those of you that are interested in becoming sponsored, don't just go fishing, man. Don't just go fishing for companies that are going to give you 5% off of their doodads. Get involved with companies that you already like and stand behind their products. It's much better that way.
Oh, 100%. And, it's go buy it and then tell them how much you like it, post about it on the internet, and maybe they'll notice you. And that's kind of where you get those genuine like interactions with like owners and, people who actually run marketing.
Or just reach out. Like, it's the worst thing they can say is no. But if you were the owner of a company and you had a shooter, and don't ask for more than you're worth, like, not to be a jerk, but like if you've been shooting for 6 months and you're a C-class shooter, maybe don't call up a bullet company and ask for 10,000 free bullets a year. They probably won't give it to you. But it makes perfect sense to say, hey, I'm kind of new to this, but I post online and stuff, and I've been using your stuff, and I really, really like it. I would be willing to, to pay for my own jersey, and I'd love to put your brand on there to get a reasonable discount on your stuff. And they will probably say, you're like the one person I've talked to that had a reasonable business proposal. I'd love to give you 10 or 20% off of something that you already like and use. So for those of you that are interested in getting some level of support in this sport, just do it that way. Like use companies that you already use and make proposals that make sense.
Oh, 100%. Yes. Do that, people. Listen to Kenny. Be smart.
This is my old man dad advice. Dad advice.
There you go. Well, yeah, you are a dad, so it does kind of work.
No doubt.
Yep. But Kenny, bro, thanks for coming on. This has been a hoot. But listeners, and thank you for listening. Until next time, guys, get out and do the things.
Yeah, do the things.